Good afternoon. My name is Gord Heidel, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Morgan Waldo. Morgan is a truck and transport technician. She has been working in the field for many years and has a wealth of information and experience that she's going to share with us tonight. Just a reminder that if you're watching this video, please fill out the survey that can be found on the RDIEC website, Regina District Industry Education Council website, www.rdiec.ca. If you fill out that survey and complete it, you are entered to win or to possibly win a monthly $50 gift certificate that we draw for each month. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Morgan. Thank you again, Morgan, for taking time out of your day to allow this presentation.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Like Gord said, I'm a truck and transport technician. And what that means is essentially, in layman's terms, I'm a mechanic. If you know anything about mechanics, there are a few different types of mechanics. You have your automotive mechanics, you have your airplane mechanics, you have your heavy duty mechanics, your agriculture mechanics, and in my case, truck and transport technician or mechanic. So understanding and knowing the industry will determine what pathway you will take through apprenticeship. I currently have a role at GFL Environmental Liquids. I'm a journey person, and I'm their lead hand, parts person, supervisor, sometimes foreman. I play a lot of roles in the shop at this time. I went through the SAS Polytech Apprenticeship program, right from level 1 up until level 4. And then, of course, writing my journey person exam. There are options with the truck and transport program, the agriculture program, and the heavy duty program to complete your first and second year simultaneously, earning a few hundred hours before you even get into the trade. And that's something to look into if you know that's exactly what you want to do. However, most employers do prefer seeing you go through as a laborer, then a lube tech, then an apprentice, and eventually indentured into the SAS Polytech apprenticeship program. In my experience, being a person who didn't have any mechanical background, doing it my route was much better for me. However, my partner is an agriculture mechanic. He had some mechanical experience, some trade experience. So he did year 1 and 2 simultaneously up in Saskatoon, and that worked very well for him. I do have some university experience, but like it says there, I just really had no interest in completing it and find that working with my hands is much more interesting. The duties I have right now, like I said, part of my role is supervisor or service writer, which is something that every division of the industry will have is a service writer. So that person organizes and assigns duties to other technicians. And in my case, because I'm still a technician, to myself as well. So ensuring that all complaints are addressed from our customers. At this time, I work for a fleet. So our customers are our drivers and our trucks that we routinely work on. But service writers in places like dealerships will have to work with a new customer almost every single time they talk on the phone. So it's really important that that role is fulfilled and done very, very well. So it takes someone who has a lot of organizational skills. My other role as supervisor is sometimes, and as a lead hand, is with my experience, I oversee technicians on their repairs. I advise on ways they can complete them. And if they're struggling with diagnosing certain things, especially electrical, that's where my role is also fulfilled in assisting them finding the answer to those problems. So I not only provide advice to other technicians on diagnosis and repairs, but I also am responsible for providing diagnosis and repairs on equipment myself and reporting to supervisors above me. So role with parts is that the technicians will come and discuss what they need from me. I'll oversee that it is what they need. I will order it, and then I receive it, I invoice it, and inventory, and then I hand it out to our technicians. So like I said, I do play a lot of roles in our organization, ensuring that the fleet does run quite smoothly. This is just touching on the kind of equipment that we use and the kind of spaces that we work with. Welders, plasma cutters, torchers. Really interesting thing that I find about mechanics is that we are a jack of all trades, especially in the line of work that I'm in. I don't just work on tractors that are on the highway, the semi trucks that you see pulling trailers. I also work on very specialized equipment called vac trucks. They range from septic trucks to hydrovacing to steam trucks. So some of the equipment, when it breaks, there's no other way to repair it other than fabrication or being creative. And so that's where the fun parts in getting into different areas of the trade come in, and you get to touch into a bit of your creative side. PPE for where we are, we have to follow mine PPE rules, which means the above there is required: hard hats, coveralls, glasses, boots. You cannot be in our shop without wearing your PPE. The personal tools that we use, every mechanic has a different kind of set, but generally speaking, we all have similar hand tools and similar sets. There are your basic hand tools that are very, very important. You can't do your job without. And then there's the specialty tools, like once you get into wireless stuff, rather than the air stuff or the electrical stuff. And it's definitely worth the investment, because sometimes you'll work in a shop where time, it really is money. And what I mean by that is perhaps an automotive mechanic, they work for a flat rate. So they're given an allotted period of time, and their goal is to not only beat that time, but exceed or become much lower that time so they can make their money. So the investment in personal tooling is absolutely imperative for a technician's success. And it's also about the cost of a university degree. So if this is a trade that someone is interested in, there are certainly grants and loans available as technicians and as apprentices, but it is something that is to be mindful of before coming into the trade. You really need to know that it's something you want to do. Personally, I've invested anywhere between 20 and 30,000. We work in a pretty small shop. Shops range in all sorts of sizes. Dealerships, you'll see pits. Where we work, we don't have a pit. They're not very common, but very nice to work in. If that's, again, if this is a trade that you're interested in, asking to see the shop during an interview process is important so that you get an idea of what you're working in. Is it a dirty shop? Is it an organized shop? If it's a dirty, unorganized shop, chances are safety isn't a priority. Keeping that in mind. Sometimes we do have to work in a field when a truck breaks down, and that, again, you got to tap into your creativity and keeping safety in mind 100%, making sure we're chalking our wheels, we're taking the keys out of the ignition, making sure that not only are we safe, but our drivers are safe and anyone else who are in our area are safe. So there's a lot of rewards to this job. First one definitely being the sense of accomplishment. I don't have a mechanical background. The reason I got into wrenching is during university, I realized I wasn't happy with an academia profession, and I was working as a bicycle mechanic and realized I preferred working with my hands rather than in a textbook all the time or writing reports. So I'm a firm believer that if you're interested in something, anything is learned. You know, your accountant didn't have a clue how to work an Excel sheet. Your teachers probably didn't have an idea how to manage a classroom. These things are learned. And with the right environment, being with the right journeyman, and with the right attitude, you can go really far, or you can go really far in this industry. The rule of three I have written in there, very, very important. Investing in your own tools is investing in yourself and is investing in your career. It's okay to borrow tools, but if you've borrowed that tool 3 times or more, you are responsible to buy one for yourself. It's an unwritten rule, but it's important to pay attention to that. Building your tool collection takes time. It's not done overnight. You buy a piece here, you buy a piece there, you learn from your mistakes in buying certain equipment. But if I can recommend that certain things you don't cheap out on your ratchets. Don't cheap out on your Allen keys. You can kind of cheap out on your wrenches. I've used a set of basic Mastercraft wrenches almost my entire career. I've only replaced 1 or 2. And when they go on sale, you can get a whole set of standard and metric for only $50. And I'll buy an extra set just so that if I have to make a tool or cut up a wrench, I can do that without feeling bad about it. Another thing I've learned not to cheap out on are good screwdrivers. Screwdrivers aren't used very often in our trade. They might be more so in automotive, but in truck and transport, when you do need a screwdriver, you need a good one. Metallic, magnetic tipped screwdrivers are fantastic. Snap-on makes them. I don't normally advertise that brand, but there are certain things you have to buy that cost a lot of money. Don't invest in a lot of high-end electrical tools like your drills and your impacts right off the bat. Those are a luxury tool. They're not something you need right away. If they're a good price and you have the money, why not? Don't spend a lot of money on toolboxes. A toolbox is a place of storage. It's kind of, think of it like a car. If it's functional and it works and it gets you from point A to point B, who cares? You're not there to win a beauty contest. My first toolbox cost me $300 and I used it for 5 years before I upgraded to a used toolbox for another $800. And I've been using that for almost 5 years. So don't spend a lot of money on your storage. Spend your money on your good hand tools, and don't spend too much money on the electrical stuff. And if you're also getting into the trade without knowing a whole heck of a lot, don't buy yourself a multimeter. Borrow for a little bit before and learn how to use it properly first, because a multimeter is a very personal tool and you want to make sure you're happy with it. The fun thing about trades is that your education is often subsidized by your employer. One thing to ask about when interviewing is seeing how and asking about how they indenture their employees, how they are involved with SASC Apprenticeship, making sure that that's part of your contract if that's something you're interested in after putting in so many hours or so many months, that if you and your employer agreed, they will sign the indentured papers, you become an apprentice. Are they going to pay for your tuition? If not, is there going to be a top up while you're away? When you're at school as an apprentice, apprenticeship provides you a code that allows you to utilize the EI system without having too many problems. In my experience and my colleagues' experience, the first year utilizing the EI system with your apprenticeship code, generally speaking, you're going to experience some problems and some significant delays. Financially prepare yourself, and you will eventually be paid at some point, but being financially prepared to go to school is very, very important. The government does provide apprenticeship loans and grants, but that's like taking out a student loan. And quite frankly, in my opinion, with the indentured program, there's really no reason that you should have to do that. Finally, being able to do my own work on my own vehicles, I have no problem say, like, if a check engine light comes on, I scan it. Is it important? If yes, I deal with it. If not, well, typically I'll ignore it. But having the empowerment and knowledge of knowing what's going on in your vehicle is a freedom like no other, because not only does it financially free you from having to rely on other people to do the work, it also provides a peace of mind that I didn't know I needed. So definitely a fantastic reward. On top of all these other rewards, just it's a fun job. That's about it. It definitely is heavy work. You have to be prepared that if you're not a physically fit person, it's very, very challenging. You're up, you're down, you're on the floor, you're on your back, you're up going ladders, you're coming off of vessels, you're averaging about 8,000 steps a day. But it's not a challenge that's undoable. And just being prepared for that. A really, really important thing is investing in very, very good boots. I can promise you through experience that my Red Wings have not let me down, the classic Red Wings. I've replaced the soles on them twice and just change out the footbeds every now and again. And I can work for hours in them. And in fact, I use them as my hiking boots. Time restrictions are a real thing. It doesn't matter what industry, maybe except automotive, that if the wheels aren't turning, you're not making money. And so you can likely experience some stressors from management to hurry up and go, maybe cut some corners. And in my experience, I bet you in everybody's experience, anytime a corner is cut, generally it'll cost you more time, more money. And the reality is, this is a very safety-driven industry. Shortcuts can equal death. That sounds dramatic, but I mean it. There is not a repair that I do that does not occur to me that this truck is going on the road where my family, my friends, the drivers that I care about, people I don't even know can be at risk if I don't do my job correctly. So even when a manager is breathing down my neck, I am doing my best to work fast, but I take safety very, very seriously because of that reason. This can also be determined about whether or not you work for a fleet as compared to a dealership or a mom and pop shop. Fleets have a little bit more freedom in how much time you have, not very much, but definitely a little bit more, because you don't deal with what are called standard rate times. And standard rate times are what the industry have decided that certain repairs, how much time they will take. And that's where your flat rates come in, and how dealerships bill their customers, or how, if you've ever had vehicle work, how they've broken down the labor on your bills. So those standard rate times are industry wide, and dealerships adhere to them 100%. Fleets use them kind of as a reference. So understanding what those kind of take will really assist with how to understand those kind of things. Knowing where to work. It's been a lesson for me for sure. Through my apprenticeship, I intentionally moved around a little bit more than the average person might consider would be normal. I did that because of my lack of experience prior to getting into the industry. I wanted to know how different shops worked. So what I can tell you is that smaller owned businesses are my favorite to work for. They don't have as much overtime, if that's what you're interested in. I personally am not. They don't have as much overtime available. However, they are certainly more focused on additional quality to the repair because their reputation is so much more important to protect. Dealerships kind of are in between. They do, you have some good managers who definitely look at you as a person. You're more a number as an employee. It's a lot more go, go, go. They do stress time quite a bit more because there is an expectation that your experience is at a higher level, which is more than reasonable. So dealerships are definitely something that if you're looking to work at maybe the highest level of mechanics, that might be something that would interest you. Fleets are a little bit more on the relaxed side sometimes. They definitely will expect a lot of overtime from you because a lot of fleets work 24/7. So if a truck breaks down, oftentimes that truck is the only truck that can do that job. There aren't trucks that can come in and change it up, or might be halfway down the road that needs to get fixed, not now, but right now. But then there's some downtime where you've caught up on your services, and you've checked your preventative maintenance, and things are just flowing really nicely. Keep in mind, when working at a fleet, it does not matter what level you are, whether you're a laborer, a first year, and so on to a journeyman. Services are a daily part of your job. So that means doing oil changes, greasing, very much first level apprenticeship work, but it is expected from everyone and is often. Whereas dealerships, you're going to see your first years doing that kind of grunt work, and the journey people doing the diagnosis, the more, I want to say, intelligent work rather than the grunt work. So just kind of understanding and knowing what you want out of your career and how you might want it to flow. I highly recommend fleets for maybe first and second year, or in my case, I'm currently pregnant, so it's really nice because I can kind of slow down a little bit. I have a little bit more flexibility in my role. So fleets are really good for a little bit slower pace, but expect some higher pace. And dealerships for maybe that third, fourth, and journeyman and on experience. And then the mom and pop shops are kind of in between. Every single one is different. The salary is very real. I started at $15 an hour, which translates to about 30,000 a year. And there's certainly techs that, depending where you work, you can go up north, you can work the pipelines, you can work the mines, and they can by far exceed $250,000 a year. And that comes down to a lot of overtime. So it's not easy money, but you can make very, very good money in a short period of time. The average journeyman starting wage right now with experience in Regina, whether you're a truck and transport, heavy duty, or agriculture technician, is currently $44.50. So knowing whether or not the place you work provides overtime or not, depending on even if that's what you want. Knowing where you can get to at some point is very, very important. During your interview process, asking them what their scale is. So what's a first year paid? What's a second year paid? So on and so forth. So that when you come back from school, you know what to expect for pay, because in your contract, your employer generally will agree to increase your pay every time you come back from school. In my experience, it didn't happen for me first or second year, but I fought for it third and fourth year, and it worked out really well for me. I've worked in places with benefits that were very, very good, and I've worked in places that haven't been so good. Currently, I'm kind of in the middle. So I've worked for places where tool allowances are like $500 a year. Some will increase after so many years. And a lot of places don't even offer it at all. It's really, really beneficial because there's what's called the tool trucks. And you can definitely rack up a pretty decent bill with these trucks. And it's a great way to pay them off every year. Boot allowances generally will be about $150 to $200 a year. Some places don't offer them at all. I've worked in places with very, very basic minimal coverage. So I didn't have any eye coverage. I didn't have certain medical coverage. My dental coverage wasn't really great. And I've also worked in places and also will charge you on your pay stubs for your benefits. And some places will provide very excellent coverage without you being charged at all. So these are questions that need to be asked during your interview process. You can't expect to know them right off the bat. Some places are very transparent about it. Some places will provide your education, some won't. Some will provide a pension plan and some won't. I currently work at a place with a pension plan that matches up to 3%, but I can contribute as much as I want. There's places that provide a pension plan up to 15%, so you don't even need to add anything. Questions that need to be asked during your interview. Holidays, most places will offer 3 weeks of holidays plus your provincial stats. That's general. Some might only offer 2. And then most places start around 8 and are done by 4:35. And then fleet can range all over the place. I've worked night shift, I've worked evening shift, I've worked early morning shift. These are just questions. You got to ask the questions. So PDs are personal development. I find in the truck and transport industry, these are very much based on what you want to do with your own time. Whereas perhaps in the agricultural industry and the heavy duty industry, they do tend to focus a little bit more on providing the education outside of your journeyman because of the vast range of equipment that's out there. Whereas truck and transport, the range isn't quite as expansive. So understanding your different support systems. So important engines to know are your Cummins, your Detroits, your Volvos, your Macs, and knowing how to use those computer systems and what to do with them. And that comes down to experience. That comes down to having worked in different shops. That comes down to what your employer generally runs. So fleets will try and stick with one kind of style of engine, one kind of style of chassis, and some won't. But generally, like our fleet currently runs primarily Detroit and Cummins engines. We have a couple of Waldo snuck in there. We have a couple of Mercedes. We have a couple of Navistars. But understanding your primary engines, very, very good place to start. IT support isn't really needed a ton because how much we work on the computers, we utilize very specific programming. So the IT support we need sometimes just comes down to the computer itself. The engine programs do have IT numbers, and they're okay. But the more experience a technician gets and the ability to communicate with their supervisors, the ability to communicate with more experienced technicians, that's your IT support. Personally, very few shops are unionized. I can only think of really one specific shop that's unionized besides Co-op Refinery. And then your professional associations. So of course your Red Seal or what Red Seals are now called interprovincial. So when you write your journey person, it used to be that you would have to write your journey person and then your Red Seal, and you could work across Canada. Excuse me. Now, when you write your journey person, you earn your interprovincial right off the bat. So once you earn your interprovincial, you can work across Canada anywhere. And it's recognized as the same education from BC to Nova Scotia. Your Blue Seal is once you've earned your Red Seal. This is where you go back to Sask Polytech, and they have a whole list of selected programs based on management experience that you can pick and choose and earn your Blue Seal after so many classes or after so many hours. There's a whole bunch of information on the Sask Polytech website. Personally, I'll definitely be striving for it myself. SCSA is your Sask Construction Safety Association. They have a ton of classes to provide you with industry safety standards. You can also work towards auditing. You can work towards CORE. You can work towards NSCO. Once you have a Red Seal, the sky's the limit really for what you can do. And in my personal opinions, I think safety's where it's at. Safety's not going anywhere. And safety is trade-wide. It's not just coming down to your mechanics. It comes down to construction. It comes down to plumbing. It comes down to electrical. It comes down to job sites. It comes down to mines, pipelines, you name it. They need a safety guy. And once you have that mechanical experience, that IP, that Blue Seal, very, very, very good position to be in. The American associations, they have a very interactive and very extensive educational program that allow Canadians to participate in. Their programming and education programs are a little bit different than the way Canadians do it. And there's contests, there's forums, there's oh shoot, I can't think of the word, but nonetheless, very, very good place to look for stuff. And of course, your Sask Polytech and your Sask Apprenticeship, very good supports to look into. Currently, now is the time to find a job. Everybody is shorthanded. Everybody needs a mechanic. It is a great time to get an apprenticeship. There have been times in my career where it hasn't been so much, but I'd say more often than not, people are looking. Advancement is a little tricky in this industry because once someone's earned the role of maybe a service writer, a senior parts person, a safety guy, there's really only one role within the shop or the organization for that position, and they tend to hold on to it for quite a few years. But working your way up as a senior technician, that person to go to for diagnosis, that's where you make your money, and that's where you make your reputation is as a diagnostician. Being able to see a problem, identify a problem, and fix the problem. very, very, very important, especially with the way our industry is going towards more electrical reliance. Having a strong foundation in your electrical in your electrical knowledge and abilities is imperative to your success as a modern day technician. You can't get away from electrical because everything's run by electrical systems. So if you choose to go towards an apprenticeship, I cannot stress enough how important it is to not treat your schooling as a vacation and treat it like your life depends on it, because in a way it kind of does financially. When I went to school, again, because my lack of experience forced me to, but I also had an interest in being the very best I could be. And I spent every waking hour outside of skiing or outside of school, besides maybe an hour or two for myself, studying my butt off. And it's really paid off now, because during the time I didn't fully 100% understand what I was reading or what I was taking in. But as I have worked through my experience, my foundations have really assisted me in that my technical knowledge now is so strong. My experience now is so much more vast. So the conversations I'm able to have and communicate with my supervisors because of that, hey, get down. Are why I'm worth my weight in what they pay me and why I have the roles I have in the organization I'm in. And I've already touched on the other ones, so I think that's good. So this kind of work-life balance kind of goes back to what you want out of your life. Are you a single person? Are you a money-driven person? Are you someone who just wants to go do a good job and then get home? That will determine whether or not you want to work for a mom and pop shop, a fleet, or a dealership. If you work for a fleet, the expectations are that your work-life balance probably aren't going to be that great, especially right off the hop. If you work for a dealership, when 5 o'clock rolls around, 5 o'clock, you're done. Pack up your tools and off you go. Usually with time off, I have never had an issue as long as I'm 2 weeks to a month ahead of time asking for time off. I cannot think of a time I've been denied any time off. Holidays, of course, your stats are off. And I've already discussed the overtime, and that dealerships usually are quite limited. And then fleets and private are often unlimited. Keep in mind though, if you decide to go to a location with overtime, you will be expected to work overtime. That is not a written rule, but certainly something to consider based on what you want out of your life. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can reach me on my email, morgan.waldo78@gmail.com. And I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And I love talking about this stuff. I love teaching. And so, yeah, I hope I hear from some of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morgan. That was awesome. A lot of information for young students that are thinking about getting into the truck and transport industry. As a female in this industry, what advice would you have for young women that are considering heading down this path? Any pitfalls to avoid? Anything that you would tell them that's a little bit different?
Maybe. First things first, one thing I've noticed with young females that I've seen in the school, if you have long hair, tie it up, get it out of your face, and wear a hat. Like, you got to protect yourself. Remember, you're not there to look pretty. You're there to do a job. You're not there to impress anyone. Don't skimp out. like no spaghetti t-shirt or spaghetti tank tops. You got to wear a t-shirt underneath your coveralls. And in reality, I know it sucks, but you got to develop a bit of a thick skin. Boys can be gross.
So I want to thank you very much, Morgan, for your presentation. Burnett, do you have any questions at all?
No, I want to thank Morgan too. I mean, I think you're an example of somebody who, you know, like you said, you didn't have the background of knowledge when it came to this trade, but by hard work and learning, you know, you've made, you know, a very good career out of it. And I think that you know, a lot of people can aspire to that drive that you've talked about. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.